Hello, I'm Cat, and Minecraft officially only has 23 unique structures, and that's with them counting this single block chest. But what's interesting is that most of these structures are exactly the same every time you find them. Take this jungle temple for example. It's generated in a lake, but we know it's going to be the exact same as every other jungle temple out there. But this isn't true for the 6 structures with rooms. In fact, 2 of them have diamond blocks inside of them that you might not have ever known about because you just haven't seen that room. Indeed, 5 structures go a step even further, being so different every time they generate that they're basically entirely different structures. So take this ruin portal for example. It has a gold block at the top, but then take a second ruin portal which generously generated not that far away, and you can see that it does not have the exact same blocks because there are 2 separate structures which only have gold blocks sometimes, and in this video you're going to learn exactly which 2 those are alongside the diamond blocks. Let's go into all of these structure variants today by starting with what I mean by no structure variants off the jungle temple. Every time you come in here, it's the exact same puzzle. Even this little tripwire hook with the arrow, which bounces off my face apparently, even this exact same tripwire hook is going to have the same arrows. They're never going to be poisoned, as cool as that would be, with the same chests in these same locations, and therefore even the same puzzles. If you want to solve it, by the way, put both of these levers down and then put them back up in this order, and you'll find that there is a lovely hole that you can use to grab the chest from. Well, I mean, you're gonna have to climb down the hole apparently, but look at that, I solved the puzzle. This is the same every time, and so you don't feel like a genius when you solve the desert temple puzzle. You don't feel like a super genius when you work out that the witch hut has a witch in, because it's just how they always are, which is something they decided to change when they started introducing the brand new structures for 1.0, which have different rooms every time you find them. The first example of this I'd like to give has to be the igloo. There are 2 versions of the igloo, and if you've only ever found one, you might think it's the most pointless structure, because below the floor in this igloo is literally nothing. I can come in here to smelt, to come to sleep, and maybe to do some crafting, but that's all the value I'm going to get from here. However, there is an igloo with a basement, so capable in fact that you could survive a full 100 days on it. Don't ask me how I know that one. But there are also the 2 classic examples, both added during the original full release of Minecraft, with the stronghold being the classic example. Every stronghold is meant to give you access to one of these rooms, but how you find that stronghold room is, well, a challenge for the ages, right? Many a Minecraft run has been ruined by either a lack of an end portal or a lack of ability to find it, but the same is true for the library room, which gives you great access to enchantments. If you've never actually gone in here and done that, then just over here there's a chest which gives you some incredibly enchanted books. You can't find these naturally in the wild, although I'm gonna have to find some space for them. Look how incredible these are. But yeah, there are different rooms in different strongholds, and there are a couple that you won't find in every single one of them. Whether they're the best rooms or not is up for you to debate, but the same is true for the fortress. This nether structure is different in every world that you generate it, because all of these corridors will go in different directions to different places at different times, but you know that you should hope to get at least 1 blaze spawner. If you get more than 1, you're quite lucky, because you can do some more farming fun, and also you should expect to see at least 1 soul sand / netherwart room. As of console edition being discontinued, this is the only realistic way to get your hands on a lot of netherwart, and so these rooms are very valuable, but they're not in the same place relative to the rest of the structure. The structure with the most obvious rooms has to be the Woodland Mansion, because its rooms are literally rooms, and there's obviously a room with a giant chicken, like most mansions have, and a room with a tree and nothing else. It doesn't feel like this place was actually designed by anyone besides me as a 9-year-old, but you know what's interesting is the Woodland Mansion has a room which is quite rare to generate, but actually contains a diamond block surrounded by lava. This is fascinating. There's also one with a diamond block surrounded by obsidian, but this means that you can find 9 diamonds, a block which is even more valuable than diamond ore, because if I mine this diamond ore, I'm just going to get 1, or in this case 0 diamonds back, but if you mine a diamond block, it's 9 whole diamonds, enough to make a chest plate and a jukebox, and that is the value that this structure brings. But it's also duplicated in the trial chambers, because you can find in pots in the hallways sometimes a diamond block, but also certain intersection barrels, not chests, will contain diamond blocks too. So 2 structures contain diamond blocks, but even more interestingly, the ancient city, which doesn't contain diamond blocks, it just contains sadness and pain. Interestingly, this is also made up of rooms. It might not look like it on the surface, it might look like a structure that's different every time, but actually this is a room, this is a room, this is an extreme amount of pain coming my way, and this is a room too. They're just rearranged in different ways every time you come here. So this is the village, or if you're a Minecraft boomer like me, the NPC village, and what's interesting about it is it kind of falls outside of the artificial categories I created just for the the sake of this video, because let's be honest, this isn't a structure with no variance, it's different every time you see it, but is it a structure that has variance, or does it just have different rooms? On the surface, it has lots of variance. The plains, the taiga, the desert, there are 5 separate village variants, as well as 7 villager variants. Don't ask how those numbers aren't aligned, but what's interesting about this is the fact that, yeah, actually looking into the files, the way this generates is it's just a series of rooms, like the Desert Blacksmith or the Desert Temple, not that Desert Temple 1 and Desert Temple 2, and so if you look at each of these rooms, you can see, like, yeah, a village really is just like a woodland mansion, but out in the open. And so I would argue if it has to fit a category, it probably fits the category of structures that only have variance via rooms. Also, I have to say, villagers, not the smartest of people around, not by a long shot. But you know, if you're gonna start the job, you might as well finish it, buddy. Anyway, so the interesting thing, therefore, is that there are structures that have actual variance, and if you count these structure variants as individual structures, Minecraft actually has over 100. And so let's jump into the ultimate structure variant guide. I actually wanted to make this as a standalone video until I realized that explaining why it is that these structures have variance and how cool it is that you might not have seen some of those is something that might not make sense unless you realize that most structures don't have variance, and some of the ones that do basically just rearrange the same blocks. But shipwrecks are a great example of a structure you probably haven't seen every version of, because they all are hard-coded separately, and there's only 20 variants, 10 normal and 10 which are very degraded. But interestingly, then there's specific combinations of which wood spawns in which place. This is a dark oak and jungle boat, this is an oak boat, this is a dark oak and spruce boat, and this is a spruce and oak, and there's actually 9 separate combinations. The acacia spruce combination is exclusive to Bedrock for some reason, but if we count each of those combinations with each of these variants, there are 180 separate shipwrecks, all of which are hard-coded. And so this is interesting by itself, but it's also really useful information to know about, because each of these shipwrecks has a different number of possible chest locations. So you might assume logically, and it'd be fair to guess this, that the more shipwreck, the more shipwreck there is, the more you might be able to find yourself chests. But actually, the way it kind of works is different because of the semi-randomness of it, meaning that you can find a full shipwreck with no chests, and you can find a pretty much destroyed shipwreck on its side right here that has 2 separate ones. One over here with, ooh, emeralds inside of it, and then there's a second one just at the front here that you've probably already spotted. This is the incredible thing about shipwrecks, and I just want to say, looking at each of these, you can see that some are destroyed by being on their side, some have been cut in half, this one is upside down, but interestingly, like you might have guessed from the fact that some are normal, some have actually fully survived. There are just minor pieces of cosmetic damage done to some of these ships, and so if we climb this upside down one, take a look at this ship right here. It is fully intact, and just like in the real world, this has the far more interesting lore questions, because an upside down capsized ship, you understand, like, oh yeah, the people died at sea who made it, but the people who made this boat went missing at some point, and the boat came back without them. Who created this boat and then abandoned it? I need to know the lore answer to that, but also, I just need to say that, yeah, there are lots of shipwreck variants, and even if you go to one which has all of the, structure fully there, you might not find as many chests as you're hoping. So this is a almost complete ship, for example, or actually, this is a better example. This is a basically complete ship, but there's meant to be a chest here sometimes, it's not always going to be there. There's meant to be a ship, or there's meant to be 2 chests potentially in here, but there's not one here. There's just a single chest found right here with a treasure map. And indeed, that buried treasure chest I made fun of so long ago. I can't believe Minecraft thinks that's a structure, but not the nether fossil. But again, we're talking about technicalities at this point. And the technicality of the shipwreck is that you might not realize how many pieces of iron and emerald you have sitting below your feet, because you might not realize every shipwreck is different. And so just because you find one that has 0 or 1 chests, it doesn't mean that they all will be that way. In fact, some shipwreck variants have 3. So speaking of variants, ocean ruins, these are one of the most interesting ones, because there are just 24 variants, but they're so different to each other that you almost have to question, how are these all considered the same structure? I mean, the sandstone made ruins are found in warm ocean biomes, but they're so different to one another, and honestly, when it comes to warm ocean ruins, I never know where to dig to actually find my suspicious sand. I have such a hard time doing it because they are such different structures to one another. And indeed, you can find chests in there sometimes, but most of these are actually found in the cold water water, the cold water ruins. These stone brick variants have 12 separate versions, and they're all made of stone bricks with the occasional bit of granite, mossy stone, and chiseled stone. And each of these will contain a bunch of gravel, some suspicious gravel too, as you can see right here. And even more interesting than that, you can find chests which contain all sorts. Also, wait, look at this. This is just a stone igloo. Someone at Mojang didn't feel like making an extra variant, and so they just made an igloo out of stone. And honestly, based on what I do in my survival world, can't blame them all for that one. But yeah, each of these ruins is so different to one another that calling them the same structure is something we do for convenience more than because they are actually different. Now, I would say a bit more of a middle ground between... Is this going to kill me? How did that not kill me? I have some questions. Anyway, each of the kind of middle ground between each of those is the ruin portal. So ruin portals generate in different ways, and each of these different ways has a different number of obsidian blocks as well as a different amount of lava. So the interesting thing about this is that this ruin portal, if you don't get it with all of the obsidian generating as obsidian, because the crying obsidian or regular obsidian, they'll randomly mix between those two, but the air gaps will remain the same. But yeah, if you get all of this obsidian and you don't get obsidian in your chest, you can't go to the Nether. But with this portal, even though it's missing 1-2 blocks, you've got so much lava that you can go to the Nether if you just find enough iron for a bucket. Or you find obsidian here and then you can put that with the other one. Ruin portals are fun that way. So here are all the variants of the ruin portal, including this, in my opinion, rather dumb one. It's got the two halves of the portal, one of which is standing upright, one of which is standing on its side. You might not have ever realized that, but that is how it is. We've got the staircase variant, which is kind of nice by itself. The much more, frankly, disastrous destroyed staircase variant, which I always run across. You've got the giant variant, as you can see right here. This one is interesting because it's basically telling you can make a portal of any size if you want to, or at least implying that you could do that. But personally, what I always do is I look for obsidian and I just build a tiny portal anyway. This one does have enough lava to do that if you have a bucket. And then there's this one as well. But what's interesting in my opinion is there's a second category, just like with ruins, because there are ruin portals found in the Nether that are made from black stone instead of regular stone. I would say that most Minecraft players have probably encountered most ruin portals, but you might have only ever encountered 1 or 2 of these. So just to show you through them quickly, here's the same. But, you know, it's fallen over partially. How does a ruin portal fall over? But, you know, the interesting thing is these are all the same variants, but with black stone instead of regular stone, and obviously they'll be surrounded by netherrack instead of regular stone there. And so, yeah, it's interesting that you don't find these as often. They tend to be buried a bit more, and honestly, you tend to be less excited about finding a portal when you've already gone to the Nether, because, spoiler alert, to go to the Nether, you probably have a portal that will take you home just fine. Speaking of being taken home just fine, that's not what you'll be able to have happen to you if you go to a Bastion Remnant. So, Bastion Remnants are perhaps the craziest example of this, and I would say proof of the highest effort Minecraft update we've ever had, because the Bastion Remnants are one of the biggest structures ever added, and instead of being the same structure with different rooms, they decided they wanted to go for 4 entirely different bastions, depending on where you find them, and each of these 4 bastions has such huge differences. In fact, let's jump into creative real quick and show you the fact that, yes, this bastion right here has, it's called the throne room because of the ludicrousness that is this area right here. If you, wait, yeah, this area right here, and also it's the only place where you can find a magma spawner. I'm guessing some of the water from the shipwrecks has fallen down here and accidentally covered up the lava, but you can find magma cubes in here, you can find netherite templates, and also you get one of the scariest areas in Minecraft, in my opinion, one of the coolest bits of atmosphere you can find. Okay, I've got myself trapped. You know, this is how, even in creative, I find these bastions can be messy, but yeah, this has one of the coolest pits of lava ever found. You're on a bridge, you're directly over all of this lava, and it is terrifying. But then we have the second bastion variant. This one is super, super interesting because it's got this high up area with some chests, and it overlooks this super scary area down below that can spawn in lava or can spawn in netherrack. But there's a bunch of regular piglins here, although they're zombie piglins because we brought them to the overworld. And there's a chest in the center of all of that that just tempts you to grab it, but tends to give me more issues than it's worth. So these two are my favorite 2 Bastion variants. I would say my third has to then be the bridge. If you haven't encountered the bridge, it's great because it has all of these gold blocks naturally sitting in a little pile right here. There is enough gold to trade for all the ender pearls you could ever need if you can just mine this gold without the now zombified piglins coming and attacking you. And then finally, there is the bastion. It's called the Hoglin Stables, if I'm not mistaken. And this one has 2 sets of chests overlooking the rest from these big kind of like Hoglin looking mouths. But in exchange, you have to deal with naturally generating Hoglins. I'm guessing, actually, if I had to make a prediction, each of these Hoglins are going to be Zoglins now, and it's going to be a nightmare. But yeah, if you want to, this is one of the most nightmarish structures because it tends to be that one wrong hit gets you put straight into lava. It's all of the pain of the throne room, but without any of the epicness of that fight. And so I would say the biggest benefit to this place otherwise is the fact that you can grab your chests and just kind of run for it. There is naturally generated also, and then there's another chest over here. Look at that. There is also a couple of gold blocks that you can find naturally throughout here, because every Bastion variant has gold in a slightly different place. Take this one, for example. If I'm not mistaken, just behind some of these blocks here, I think I picked the wrong version. I think it's this version over here. Just behind some of the blocks, you'll actually find that there is some gold. They can be a real pain to find, but because they're very well hidden, but there are random gold blocks interspersed in this structure. In fact, going into spectator mode, you can see that every single bastion type has some gold hanging around it somewhere. There's 2 over here, and then if we go to the, I'm going to go to the stable one over here. If we go down to the bottom of this, you can see that, oh, what is that? There's some gold hanging around in the middle of nowhere here. I love the way that these bastions are just filled with things to discover. And so years after it was added in 2020, every time I go to a bastion, I still feel like there's a decent chance I'll spot something new. And that is the beauty of adding 4 versions of a structure rather than 1. But yeah, I actually kind of want to know, what do you... Oh, I could have actually teleported myself to each of these. I want to know your thoughts about about the difference between variants and not. Do you think that the variants actually add more to the game, or do you think they remove it? For now, I'll just leave you with the question of what happens when a cat falls off a bridge